Hello, my friends, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for being a part of my community. On the stand today, we have Racing for Home Persephone. Persephone has been on the stand already with our Meet the Goat series, so if you want to learn more about her, check that out. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, while you're here, hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button. All of that is a free way to support the channel. It really tells YouTube you enjoyed it. That means YouTube shows it to other people, and that's how we grow. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Every time I put Persephone on the stand, I take one look at her and I say, girl, what have you done to yourself? How is it even possible? None of the other goats are as much of a hot mess as you are. She is dirty. She is ragged. Her coat is all sorts of vegetation in it. And it's funny. I forget that she is such a super hard fainter. She faints all the time. And she full on faints. Usually by the time the goats are, 3 or 4 years old, they don't full on faint as much anymore. It can happen, but they have learned how to control their bodies. They've learned what sets them off. And of course, there isn't much that sets them off anymore because they're used to their environment and they've experienced the world. So they don't really faint, they stiffen up. And a couple of you have seen that in some of our videos where the goats look like they're walking stiff-legged or they're limping. That's them being stiff and being partially fainted. But Persephone, goodness gracious. Even when I went to get her today, she went into a full-on faint, down on the ground, landed on my boots. And we have to just sit there and, oh no, Scooby-Doo, and wait for her to come on back. She's only down for 20, 30 seconds, but that's got to be why her coat is the worst kept of all of them. I mean, she gets the same amount of grooming that everybody else does. She gets it the same frequency, and yet she's got so much vegetation in her coat, so much dirt in her coat, and of course she has to be white, right? Regardless, she's still one of my favorite goats, aren't you? You're just so sweet. And part of that is, of course, she knows she's a hard fainter, so if she's not sweet, she'll knock herself over. There are benefits to that. Let's talk about fainting a bit. I don't think we ever have. And that's funny because usually I will talk about fainting. And people ask me all the time about fainting. So yes, these are fainting goats. They do faint, all of them, every single one of them. For the specific breed, for mini Silky fainting goats, they do not need to faint to be considered a part of the breed, which is a little frustrating for me because why would we call them fainting goats if they don't faint? But okay, we'll roll with it. So a fainting goat is on the Livestock Conservancy list. Typically, that's a Tennessee fainting goat, which is a meat goat. They are or were threatened. They've gotten a little bit more populated recently. But one of the reasons that this breed appealed to me is because it had that fainting characteristic that was, again, kind of on the outs in terms of being still in this world. And it fits the theme of the animals that I have. They're on the Livestock Conservancy list. They're going the way of the dodo because they no longer have a purpose. So I have talked to you about that, right? The fact that we're trying to bring these goats back with a purpose. Their purpose will at some point maybe be fiber. Right now it's companionship, and that's plenty of purpose. But it could be, they could serve a new purpose in the world, which would make them much more secure in terms of, being endangered of going extinct or disappearing from our lives. So the fainting aspect is really, to me, it's a part of the breed. It's a part of why I work with the breed. But there is a scale of fainting. Fainting is called myotonia. Myotonic goat is a goat that has this gene and yes, it's much more than one gene, but for the sake of simplicity, we're just going to say one gene, that causes their muscles to tighten up. It's really a constriction of the blood supply, a constriction of the muscles. Everybody equates it with them being scared, which is true, right? If they get startled, that certainly can elicit a faint response, but it doesn't have to always be fear. It doesn't have to always be startling. They can get excited and faint. And that happens more often on my farm than anywhere else, than I've seen. I shouldn't say anywhere else. The way they faint is more often from excitement, at least in my experience. And part of that is just because I have a small herd. They know me. They know I'm the treat lady, the food lady, right? So sometimes they get excited, and as they're running to come see me, somebody falls over or somebody stiffens up. More often, it's just they stiffen up. So fainting goes on a scale of 1 to 5. And that scale is really measured by two things: how often they faint, and quote unquote, how hard they faint. How hard they faint is a little bit subjective, but it's based on whether they stiffen. So like just their back legs stiffen, but the rest of them is fine. They fully stiffen, meaning everything freezes. They can't move their head. Their neck is frozen for a minute, but they haven't fallen over. To all the way to 5, full on fall over. And nothing but legs in the air, laying on their side or their back. So that's kind of the 3 through 5, right? And the distinction is really the frequency at that point, right? How often do they faint? When the leaves blow, or do they only do that, once in a blue moon? If it's once in a blue moon, then there are 3. If they faint every time the wind blows, then it's a 5, and the 4 is somewhere in between. So it's a bit of a subjective scale, but you get the idea. I try and target my goats to be in the 2 to 3 range, right? I don't want them to be fainting all the time. I mean, sometimes that happens, right? But it's just not fun, doesn't hurt the goat in any way, shape, or form. It's nothing that's harmful to them. So the frequency of fainting is not an issue, really. The severity of fainting isn't an issue, really, in terms of the health and well-being of the animal, other than they get dirty, they roll in mud. And, I just think, like, for me and my perspective, from a health and well-being, a hard fainter, a 5 fainter, right? One that falls over every time they take a step, that's just not quality of life anymore. Again, that's an opinion, not a fact. There are a lot of people that breed specifically for 5s or more, right? Goats that are just heavy, heavy, hard fainters. Apologies, she's the second goat I've done, so my allergies are already on fire. So she is, I would call Persephone a 4, which is a little bit harder than I typically have in my herd, considering that I have her mom, her grandmother, and her great-grandmother in my herd, and none of them are even close to 4s. I have her father in my herd, or I did, and he was not a 4, so where she came up with the 4, I don't know, but that's where she is, right? She's kind of at that 4. Thankfully, her kids are much more the 2 to 3 range, and that's more what I expect. So like I said, it's a little bit more complicated than just simply one gene and one genetic component, but that's how fainting works. That's how you measure it. And that's why when people say, oh, it's so sad when they faint. No, it's not. It's not sad. Do I run out there with umbrellas and pop umbrellas in their face and try and get them to faint? No, I certainly don't do that because it's unnecessary. But fainting does not hurt them and does not impact their lifespan in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't change the health of their organs or anything else. It just is a reaction that they have, and it creates that stiff muscle tightening and it puts them sort of out of commission for somewhere between 5 to 30 seconds. Persephone is closer to the 30-second mark. When they stiffen up, sometimes it's barely 5 or 10 seconds. And sometimes they'll stiffen for quite a while there. We've got all her clumps out on this side. Happy day. So, you know, when I look at Persephone, and again, I absolutely love her to death. I can't wait to get her back in the show ring and see how she does now that she's grown up a bit. Had some kids, right? That changes the texture of your hair and it changes your body condition and all sorts of things. So it'll be interesting to see how she does now that she's mature. So I'm looking forward to doing that. But she is a hard fainter, and that is why every time I look at her coat and put her up on the stand, I'm like, dear God, woman, what have you done? Ugh. Allergies are killing me today. And I'm trying not to share those with you because that's no fun on camera. But, you know, I don't know what to tell you. I'm standing outside in a barn, brushing goats that I'm allergic to. I take allergy medication, but, you know, what the heck. All right, so now that you're on this, I'm on the side that you can see. We'll show you, you know, what I'm talking about, right? Like this, all this... I don't know if you can see this, but this is just vegetation, dirt stuck in her fur. And once a piece of something, whether it's a piece of hay, whether it's a clump of mud, gets stuck in their fur, their hair, technically it's not fur, it starts to wrap around it, right? Just like a human hair would. And it's not hard. You're seeing, like, I can get these clumps out there. There we go. There's the piece of one little tiny piece of sawdust. Started that whole clump that kind of bridged across her whole shoulder blade here. But it's fairly, you know, because I keep them maintained, it's fairly easy to get them out. It doesn't take hours. You've seen when I don't maintain them what it can take. Her belly is clumpy, but that's all of them. All of them, their bellies get clumpy. They lay on it. Why wouldn't it get clumpy, right? The reason I spend time with her mother, Misty, getting those clumps out, those underneath clumps, is because they are still in their show shape. I've showed you in the past, right, some of our bucks that are master champions, not going back in the show ring. They don't need to be unclumped on their stomach and their chest. They just need to be cut. We just cut that out and move on. It's underneath, nobody can see it, and there's no reason why. But with show quality or show goats, judges can lay hands on their chests, lay hands on their stomach. They want to feel that hair underneath, and they don't want to feel a naked goat or, you know, like the cut hair, because that's just indicative of lack of maintenance, which impacts your showmanship. It's a whole thing. So we were talking fainting, right? So Persephone is a hard fainter, and that's why she gets this. That will be not as terrible as it looks to brush out, but it does need work, and she's really the only one in the herd that gets that, and that's because she falls over and actually lays down wherever the faint happens. Thankfully, she's not, you know, a frequent fainter, meaning that she's not fainting, you know, multiple times a day. Well, she might faint once or twice a day, but that's about it, right? She's not fainting every couple hours. She's not fainting every day. She does go days without fainting. But when she faints, it's a full on, let me lay down, my legs are in the air, I'm done. And she did just faint on me as I tried to put the collar on her to put her up on the stand. She will also sometimes faint in the ring, and that is fun. Here I have this perfectly pristine, clean goat that I have washed, shampooed, conditioned, brushed, you know, done everything to make her as stunning and beautiful and shiny white as possible. And she'll be walking into the ring and poof, she's down. Now, the judges know they're fainting goats. This is not a fault. It's not a defect. It actually doesn't go against them. What can go against them is how I react to that faint, right? If I don't show the patience to enable her to recover on her own, to get up, get back in the ring, my showmanship doesn't necessarily respond well to her embarrassing me in the ring, that could be a problem. I've never actually seen a breeder react poorly. I mean, they faint. That happens. We just stand there and wait for them to recover. And then once they recover, we sometimes help them to their feet. Sometimes we wait until they get to their feet on their own. And then we look around for, desperate assistance to, give us a quick brush, give us a moment to get a comb through her, because, if she lays down on this side, let's say the side that I'm grooming, it may be gorgeous, but then she'll have laid down and she'll stand up and there'll just be all the pine chips and everything stuck in her. And that is something that the judges will not appreciate. Now, again, the judges understand breed. They understand the fact that they do faint, and they understand that if they faint like that, there's going to need to be some extra maintenance done. But at that point, you're not doing it on a grooming stand with control. You're doing it with one hand. Well, you've got one hand holding the leash. You're standing in the ring, trying to get your goat to stack appropriately, stand appropriately, so that they're best showing off their body conformation, their shape, their legs, their structure. And you're bent over them with one hand trying to brush sawdust and pine out of their coat. It's fun. Showing fainting goats requires a sense of humor. It requires patience, and a lot of times it requires an an adult beverage or two. After the show, of course, never before. But again, all our breeders in our breeding community are amazing. There's really no animosity, right? Other breeders will show your animal for you with the gusto, the zest, the fervor, whatever you want to call it, right? The same way you would. So sometimes, I'm at a show, and of course this hasn't happened in a while, thankfully, but there were times that I've had a couple of goats in the same class, just based on their ages, based on the fact that I wanted them in the show ring. And that meant that I can't show them both. I can't show two goats at the same time. I can only show one goat at a time. So I need somebody else, another pair of hands, to show the goat. If I have the farm hubby with me, great, he can show a second goat. If we have three in the same class, which has happened before, especially with the older animals, then I'm looking to another breeder who may not have somebody in that class to handle my animal for me. And, in other types of shows, think about like dog shows, I guess. And I'm picking on dog shows. Dog people, don't come at me. I'm using it as an example. It happens in other shows and other animals as well. But think about like in a dog show, if I handed, my dog to somebody who is competitive against me, are they going to do the best job possible to show that animal? I don't know. Probably not, right? They're competitive against you, and there's sort of a lack of incentive to do that. In our world, because we're such a small breed, because we're still, growing our community, I can hand my goat to any other breeder, and they will show that goat the same way I would. They will work just as hard to present that goat to the best of its, ability, to the best of their ability. And it's just a really nice way to know that you have a community and a breeding organization that functions in that way. It means that I never have to think about leaving goats behind, right? At least for now. I mean, things can change as communities get bigger, as things mature. But for now, if I have, and in this case I will, right? So if I put Persephone, Lotus, and Misty in the show this year, and that is my plan, hopefully, they will all be in the same class. And I can't handle 3 goats in the same class. I will have the farm hubby with me, so he will handle one of the others. So that leaves me with 3 goats in the same class. And I can't handle 3 goats at the same time. So I will have to hand off a goat to another breeder. And I can trust that not only can I do that, but that they will put their all into it. And that's just a fabulous feeling and fabulous community to be a part of. So obviously my brain is thinking shows, and we're getting into fall, and fall is when shows start to happen. So that's exciting. I'm excited to be able to maybe get back to a show this year, because it has been about 1.5 years. That's not true. It's been about a year. I've missed 2 shows. So yeah, it's been a year since I've been in a show. Feels longer. I miss the group. I miss the community. And I just miss the process. So you see how relatively easy all that mess came out, because it really was just surface mess. I mean, her back end, of course, is kind of like her belly, right? Like that's where they sit, that's where they lay, that's where they pee. So that's going to be messier than the sides. But the sides, God, her sides are so terrible because of that fainting. I don't have, at this point, at least right now, I don't have any other hard fainters in my herd. Everybody else is sort of, like I said, on that 2 to 3 range, where, when they're younger, they do absolutely fall over. Heck, when our babies, it doesn't matter whether they're going to be a 1, a 2, a 3. When they're babies, they fall over all the time. And that's just, that's just part of being a baby and growing up. My younger animals, like an animal like Wren, I don't know that I've ever seen Wren do anything more than even a hesitation of a faint, right? She barely faints. She does. I've seen it. I know she does it. I know she has it, but it's barely there. And that's her personality. A little bit too shining through, right? She's bold. She's brash. So there isn't much that excites her or startles her. Like, she just has a zest for life 24/7. So she sort of stays in that constant state of arousal, so to speak, right? Not sexual arousal, just arousal. Get your minds out of the gutter. It's goats we're talking about here. And then there's Persephone, who is just sweet and gentle. And yeah, the world is different for her than it is for Wren. It's not wrong, not right, just is what it is, and we react and respond to it. So it sounds like, this is interesting. So I listened back to a couple of videos, and like, you guys can hear the brush, and it sounds like I'm ripping hair from them. And I didn't realize that the first dozen groomings, right, that it actually does sound terrible. It's what this brush is intended to do, though. It is not ripping hair out of them, right? It is lifting, and I should have showed it to you when I had a clump that I could put on camera, but it's lifting the hair and sort of extracting it from the clump, not ripping it out of their bodies. But yeah, it kind of dawned on me that, like, I think I got a comment, honestly, that was not so positive about my process. And I couldn't figure out, why do you think that? Why would you think I'm hurting my goats? They're not crying. They're not doing anything. And I definitely, it certainly doesn't make sense for me to hurt my goats. Why would I? And then I kind of figured out, oh, it's this sound. That sound. That is not me ripping hair out of them. That is me, essentially 1 or 2 strands at a time, removing them from the clump that has formed around whatever piece of vegetation started it, getting it to the point, and you can see, it's hard to see, she's not being cooperative in her stance, but, you know, working through to remove any loose strands, loosen up strands around it, working from the bottom to the top, never the top to the bottom, despite what you may think you see. It's always bottom to top. Just like you would work out a knot in your kid's hair, your hair, any hair, right? You work to loosen and free it up a little bit at a time. One piece, one strand, one section. Vegetation. Until it's free. And that's exactly what I'm doing back here. But the way this brush is designed, the way it works, it does. I didn't realize it, but it does definitely sound like I'm tearing hair out of her. So no, I'm not tearing hair out of her. Is it the most pleasant feeling in the world? No, she doesn't want to stand up here on the stand and be confined. It's a beautiful day. She wants to be out in the pasture. And now she certainly doesn't want me messing around back here, which, you know, I don't have a choice, but because I have to. But back here is the one section, and it's always interesting with goats. They pee on one side or the other. The boys do it too. Their pee, even though it tends, you know, with the girl, it comes kind of straight out the back. They have one side that seems to collect the wet and the damp, and the other side stays clean. So with Persephone, it's this side that collects the wet and the damp. That's the wet and the damp. It's color changed, it's stained by urine, it's broken, it's dead. And that's another cause. I know. Nobody wants anybody back there. I know. I don't blame you. I don't want to be back here either. But that's another cause, actually, of clumps, is the buildup of urine. And if I were to leave that alone, if I were not to kind of argue with her right now, and this is the extent of our argument, so clearly not so bad. But if I were to let her win and not finish this out, that clump, that discolored, broken, yucky hair would essentially continue to ball up. I know you are done, but we have to finish this. It would essentially ball up and continue to trap more and more of her hair in it. It could also potentially start to build up a urine scald, which would be bad, right? That would hurt her skin. It would be like leaving similar, not the same, but it would be similar to leaving a diaper, a dirty diaper on somebody for an extended period of time. It's just not healthy. I know she doesn't like it. I don't particularly care for it either. Nobody likes to be brushed on their butt and around their udder and all of their parts and pieces. Again, if she were not going into the show ring, I would just snip it. But I'm trying to salvage as much of her hair as possible. And there, I mean, it really wasn't that bad. It's not that dramatic. You're a drama llama. And we're done. We're done. That's it. We're done. It's all over. So there you go. Today, I guess, was all about fainting and showing and exciting stuff coming up. I hope that you are all having an absolutely incredible day wherever you are in this world. If you hung around this long, I truly appreciate you listening in and coming along with me for the journey. You are a part of my community. I see you, I hear you, and if you leave me comments, I do respond. I really do. I try and do responses to every single comment out there. So please let me know what you're thinking. I want to hear it. Have a fabulous, fabulous day. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Be kind. And I will see you at the next one. Bye for now.